Good evening. My name is Jo Burke. I am the program director for the Northern Illinois University Art Museum. Our current exhibition, now extended through May 14th, is the NIU School of Art and Design Faculty Biennial. And in conjunction with this exhibition, we have been hosting a number of virtual faculty presentations. This evening's program, River Weaving, the 2020 Kishwaukee River installation celebrating NIU's 125th in review, will be presented by Associate Professor of Art and Design, environmental sculptor, John Siblik. Professor Siblik holds both his Bachelor of Fine Arts in Studio and Bachelor of Science in Art Education from NIU, and his Master of Fine Arts from Southern Illinois University in Carbondale. After a long tenure, teaching and serving as the Dean of the School of Liberal Arts at Upper Iowa University in Fayette, Iowa, John returned to DeKalb, where he served as director of the NIU School of Art and Design from 2015 to 19. He is currently teaching drawing in the Foundations program at the school and is active with recruiting transfer students and engaging in community arts projects. Please join me in welcoming John Siblik in a review of his installation, River Weaving.
Thank you so much, Jo.
You're welcome, John.
And thank you for joining me this evening to reflect on the river weaving installation in 2020. And I think a lot of us are doing reflection when it comes to the past 2 years in terms of like, what did we just make our way through? But it's really been exciting to kind of go back and reflect and look at images over the course of those 2 years. And even though I have personally felt like I've suffered a kind of a state of paralysis over the past couple of years, and looking at images and kind of seeing, it is nice to see that things did happen, life did carry on, and so that is certainly exciting. So I'm going to go ahead and put the slideshow up, and hopefully I can do a screen share here, and we're gonna go ahead and do that, and then see what happens, and hopefully then I will be able to next go ahead and start this show, and we're going to go from there. So I just want to ask Jo, does it look like everything's a go?
Yes, we see your
Okay, very good.
Wonderful. Thank you, John.
So as I'm going through here, I'm going to go ahead and try and really give a little bit of a sense of the history of this piece, because the piece was done in celebration of the 125th anniversary of NIU. And so it's obviously that's a historical moment for the university. And being an undergraduate from NIU, I have very strong feelings and very strong and really good memories of being a part of NIU for many years, starting in 1983 as a freshman, and then coming back after about 30 years as the director of the School of Art and Design. And so my affiliation is long and deep and broad, unlike the Kishwaukee River, which is narrow and shallow, but nonetheless, it's a great unifying natural feature of DeKalb and important to NIU. So I was actually first came up with the idea for the river weaving 36 years ago as a student here at NIU. And I was fortunate to be a student of Renee Adams, who taught here for many years in the Fibers program, and is a well-regarded artist with works in collections throughout the country, including the Art Institute of Chicago, as well as a bulk of her work just recently admitted into a prestigious museum in Kenosha, Wisconsin. So very fondly remember my experience working with her. And the class was off-loom weaving. And as you can see then, I really took the concept of what off-loom weaving could be and ran with it. And thankfully, I had an instructor who was able to encourage me. And so the piece sat dormant for many, many years as an idea. And then I was able to finally do the piece in Iowa in 2006. And then I've been doing this installation throughout the Midwest since then. And it has been truly, it's become and is the signature piece of my art career. And so it's really exciting for me to have a piece that was a piece that I considered or came up with early in my time as an artist, as a student. And so let me just, I'm going to take you through the piece here with this little video, and I'm going to hope that I can make this work. And so this is, and I'm not going to let this whole thing run, but this is really cool. This was on my anniversary with my daughter. And so her and I we actually got a chance to canoe the piece. And so she came back to town. She's at Champaign. And so she came back. And so her and I canoed the piece. We had some rain, and so the river was up. And so she came up to help me and my wife celebrate our anniversary. And so, interestingly enough, Michelle and I actually met about the same year that I first came up with this piece. So we've known each other for 34 years, which is the same length of time that this idea has been kicking around. And so there's a lot of really strong and important parallels with regard to this piece. So if you have vertigo, I'm very sorry. You may have to avert your gaze from this video. But I don't, it's really kind of fun to do it this way. And I'm sure I probably could have done some editing on this, but I'm kind of a manually working things. And so here we are going through this piece. This is probably right around September 20th or thereabouts. And so it's really cool to see this piece like this. And I've really been enjoying looking at these videos. This is one of my favorite angles of this piece with that duplex in the background, kind of serving as kind of a really a lovely little cottage in the background, even though of course it's not. But really, this is the way to see this piece, if you can, or to walk the path. And that's one of the things that makes this piece super exciting for me is the fact that you really can't take this piece in all at once. You have to walk it, you have to experience it. And so it really is, in the true sense of the word, it is an installation. And it really does require the participation of the viewer to really help to activate the piece. So speaking of history, I'm just going to read just a little bit of information that comes from a history of DeKalb from a professor here at NIU from the 70s, Earl Hayter. And so as many of you know, with regard to the history of the university forming here in DeKalb, the Kishwaukee River is an important feature of the landscape, which actually helped to influence the state officials to select DeKalb as the site for NIU prior to 1895. And Earl Hayter, Professor Hayter, who published Education and Transition to commemorate the 100th anniversary of, no, actually the 75th anniversary of DeKalb, of NIU, talks about the history of the river in relation to NIU. And so this wonderful mythic tale of the residents of DeKalb going without water for 2 days so that the city's water supply could be diverted into the Kish and have it appear to the commissioners that the Kish was in fact a mighty river, And for those of us that are alumni of NIU, it has also been stated that if you dip your toe into the Kish, you will never leave, at least in your hearts. So here we are with the installation of the piece, and starting with moving the piece. Parts of it were in storage in Sugar Grove. I was able to, I've actually built this piece a couple of times and have added to it, and it gets damaged. And so this piece actually, parts of this traveled from Iowa to Illinois. And so here we are doing the installation. And this first part of the installation here, we have a longtime friend of mine, Mark Matson, who's married to Lynn Batalden, who is a physical therapist here in town. And my wife, Michelle, is also a physical therapist. So they've known each other throughout the same time period, going back into the 80s as well. And that's Mark's son and my daughter, Merritt. And so we're doing part of this installation. And right away, Michael Day, who was on the line with us, made note of this because he has been documenting, particularly during the pandemic, what has been happening in DeKalb along the path over the course of that time. And so he noted right away that something was afoot here in the river. And so he started posting images. And so this became, I actually loved it. I almost hated to spill the beans, but he was showing images of this as it emerged in the river. And people were asking, oh my God, what's happening? What is this? It's amazing. What's going on? And then Fred Barnhart, the director of the library, was in the know about this project. And he actually made note that this was the river weaving as part of the NIU 125th celebration. And so that has been a remarkable part of this piece too, having Michael document the seasons and the birds, and then the river weaving over the course of quite a long period of time. And amazingly enough, or interestingly enough, he currently is putting up an exhibit at the NIU library with his photography, and very graciously has put together a calendar to support the Friends of the NIU library. So make sure you get to the library lower level over during the month of April, so you could see his exhibit. He exhibited his work back home in his native Rhode Island this past summer, and was very well received. So we're super excited to have Michael showing his work here at NIU. And if you haven't already, pick up a calendar and be sure to come by in April. And then circle April 5th on your calendar at noon for an artist talk that he's going to be giving. So we had to put this in stages. It's a large piece. It covers approximately a quarter mile of the river. And so many different installations, because it's something you can't do all in one day. The piece has about 115 of these arched elements that you see in the background here. And this is part of our team. The next group that we had helping consisted of my friend Ken Olson, who is also a physical therapist here in town, who has been a friend of mine since my freshman year here in '83. And we would canoe the river as students. And so we have a lot of fond memories of the Kishwaukee as well. And so these are some of my students who are helping to put the piece in. And Mael Simmons, who's a senior in illustration, was my student project manager. It was a great experience to work with her. And also in these photographs, you could see our installation team, Jose Vasquez, who's an environmental science major here at NIU, and Jared Norton, who's a business major. We can see those students, as well as Aaron Whitmore, who graduated in 2020 with a BFA in drawing. So you can see some of the process here. Oh, went backwards, I don't know why. And so Mael is there documenting. She's in the kayak, and we had to build a little barge to ferry the stone to the pieces so we could weigh the pieces down, and you'll see why that's so important. And I want to also thank Dimco for donating 3 tons of steel to help weigh down the piece. there's 3 tons of rebar that hold down the piece, and then we also got 14,000 pounds of limestone delivered from Wagner Aggregate, and they are over in the northwest corner of the county. All of this materials and the salaries for the students who helped with the piece came from a grant from NIU to support the 125th, and all the programming that went along with the celebration. As some of you may remember, there was a really amazing slate, and I think nearly everything got canceled except the river weaving, because it was one of the few things that could be done because of the fact that it was outside. And so we took full advantage of that and did a number of programs outside where we could. And many of those were offered on Zoom for our remote patrons of the museum. And I want to thank Joe and Peter for helping with the first iteration of that. And that was on September 24th, where we did a live walking tour of the river with the piece. And we also had on hand John Lustig from the Illinois State Museum, who was the moderator for that. And we ended up doing a second broadcast of that live on Facebook later on that day. So it was a very, very busy day, but it was really a lot of fun. And I think these Zoom presentations have certainly brought in our audience. And as Joe mentioned, this is live, so perhaps it'll be posted and people will get a chance to see this talk later on. So as you can see, we had quite a troupe putting the piece in, and we were collecting, I think we ended up collecting about 1,400 pounds of garbage out of the river, whether it was during the installation, you could see a tire there, or during the course of the period of the installation, whereby the piece ends up acting something like a filter in a way, because the way these rungs are set up along the river, it ends up catching a lot of debris. And you'll notice that as we go through here, we've got some shots of that as well. And then these are different days when we had to get together. We couldn't do it all at once. And so this is actually the part of the installation on the south side of the College Street Bridge. So it's quite an extensive piece, if you're wondering where we're at here at this point. You can see some of the limestone still there from that installation, and Jared and Jose helping to put the pieces. Some of them are quite deep, and we actually had to build a footing out of limestone so that we could get the piece sitting up out of the water, because some, as you know, there's well, maybe you don't, but there's some deep holes, not really deep, but in the neighborhood of 3 to 5 feet, and then most of the stream is really actually perfect for this installation. And the piece was originally designed for this stretch of the river back in 1986, and it was very gratifying to finally get a chance to install it here in this river all these years later. So really, I mean, that's part of the experience. This piece is really an experience, and the installation, it's a lot of work, but it's also a lot of fun. Most artists, as they well know, art is, you're tucked in your studio and you're working alone. So there's some really great parts of this that move out of that, where it's very collaborative. Many collaborative partners with this piece, the museum, NIU, the Alumni Foundation, Michael Day, and then local contractors, whether it's Dimco or Wagner Aggregate. The city of DeKalb helped with getting the permit for the piece through the Illinois Department of Natural Resources and the DNR. So we did get the permit for that through the engineer at the city of DeKalb. And so there are many, many layers in working with this, working with the engineers here on campus. And so all part of that process. And I think we get to do another little we're going to do another little adventure through the piece. You can kind of see, and we'll take you through here. And of course, I'm not going to let this thing run all 8 minutes, and I'll try and run this as best I can here. It is kind of fun. So if anybody has any questions, just raise your hand or pop onto the mic and go ahead and be more than happy to have a conversation with everyone here about the piece. So here we are. I believe we're close to the Lucinda Street Bridge here, coming up through the stretch along the Music Building. And it was really great to see this piece through the late summer and into the fall. And I believe that this would have been probably in late September when we did get some rain and we were able to canoe the piece. And I think this is me and my daughter again canoeing the piece. So it's interesting, instead of the paddle, I'm actually got my mouse here and I'm navigating this video, just like we had to do with the piece. The light is just amazing. Obviously the water, the sky and the clouds. So the piece is significant, but it's really, and to me, it's a significant piece, but it's just such a small element in the larger scheme of things when it comes to the landscape. And so that's one of the things that I've really appreciated about working like this as an environmental sculptor, coming into art as a painter. And really, my work has always been about the landscape. And so I feel really gratified in some ways to be able to continue an amazing tradition of landscape painting, although of course this is not painting, but having work that is active or activated by the landscape, it's reflective of the landscape. And to me, it's a new way of working, or a more of a contemporary way of working with the tradition of the landscape, with materials. And of course, I really would not have even thought to do this kind of work if it wasn't for being introduced to Christo as a student here at NIU in the art history classes. And as it turns out, Michael Day, our photographer on this piece, actually got a chance to work with Christo when in the early 70s. Do you mind telling that story real quickly, Michael? I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but it's just amazing.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, I mean, I just want to say that the publicly engaged aspect of this piece, from the permitting on through, the intrusion of artwork into the natural world. I don't know if intrusion is the right word. It's reminded me strikingly of what Christo and Jean-Claude were trying to do with their work, mostly in wrapping things. When I had just graduated from high school, Newport, Rhode Island, where I lived, had an installation that was called Monumenta, at which they put in all kinds of huge artworks all over town. And I was working in a ship chandlery at the time, and selling things for boats. And these two walked in looking very European. And they asked me how many anchors I had, how much chain and how much rope. And I ended up selling our entire inventory. And they said, oh yeah, do you know a guy with a motorboat who can help us rig? And turns out I had a motorboat. So I was one of the crew that ended up wrapping a cove on Brenton Point in Newport, Rhode Island in the summer of 1974 as part of the Monumenta celebration. But again, this was something that lasted a few weeks and eventually was carefully taken down, leaving the cove exactly as it had been, just as John has done with the river here. Although he's also taken a lot of junk out of the river, and I really appreciate that part too. So I was very happy since I walked this stretch of river just about every day and have for 10 or more years to see something happening. And this is how I met John first, when he was there with the work. And as a photographer, this is positively captivating for me to see how the piece interacts with water and nature, and particularly for me, because I like wildlife, to see what wildlife would land on it, and what kinds of photos I could get of them. These green herons and the great blue herons really particularly like to sit on the arches. So it was a beautiful time for me with the autumn and the reflections, and certainly a wonderful opportunity to be part of this, meeting John, being able to take photos of it.
Well, I really appreciate you contributing that, Michael, because when you told me about because he actually passed away right before we did this piece, and so we were reflecting, and I posted something, or it might have been right after this. It was right in this time period when he passed, and so it was really, for me, it was really important to remember him in that time. And then you commented on Facebook about having a chance to meet him. So thanks for sharing that story. That I just love that story.
Always fun.
And thanks so much for photographing the piece. It's just beautiful the way that you're able to capture the piece. And some of the best images of this piece during different installations have been done by other people. I guess sometimes as an artist does not necessarily make for a very good photographer. I'll tell you that right now. But as far as, I mean, as a painter, really just enjoy. So these are all images that Michael Day shared with me. I asked him if he would share some images with me for this presentation. And so these ones we're running through right now are all different ones that he shared with me. And as you can see, a lot of material, this is a lot of natural material. And but then of course there's lots of little vodka bottles and an air mattress and all kinds of other things when the water came up. And that was why we needed to secure the piece, because I've had to do a sculpture rescue on this piece on a couple of occasions. And so I've had to learn to obviously, when you're collaborating with nature, it's more often than not you're gonna get your butt kicked. And that's totally fine. That's to be expected. And so, trying to do what we could with about 3 tons of steel and about 14,000 pounds of stone to help to secure that in. And we did pull the steel out, but we left the rock because it does help with with the erosion, because this channel obviously is not a natural channel. It sort of has to fit our landscape here in town, unfortunately, but we certainly do appreciate the river. And just so saturated. Just really love this.
Some of that is editing, I admit.
Oh yeah, definitely. No, but
Yeah.
I mean, I was doing some editing the other day myself, and actually this, and I was trying to emulate what the kind of the richness that you're able to get here, and I was able to figure out a couple of things that I didn't know about before. And this seems like a favorite on Facebook here. This kind of an ominous evening look of this one of these elements here.
Evil eye.
Yeah, it is. But the light on the water is just incredible, and all the elements are there. And then this is, in a lot of ways, this piece becomes a real subtle accent in the landscape. And yeah, that green heron. I didn't even know about the green heron until you were photographing it. I was not even, I didn't even know the green heron exists. But I'm more familiar with the blue heron, and I think there's a picture of that one coming up here next. Yeah, you could see some junk hanging on there. I don't know if that was that part of that mattress there or not. Somebody was living under the bridge, so there was an air mattress underneath there. So that, of course, got swept away and got caught on one of these pieces. And of course, the Kingfisher, looking like he's smiling at us there. And as I mentioned, we had a chance to do a Zoom with the first walk on the piece. We did basically a walk and talk, and then later that day we worked with John Lustig there, and Kaylee, his assistant, and we did another a Facebook Live with this piece. So that's been a really fun part of this, is kind of expanding this out. Obviously, from hearing from people in town, they really appreciated having some work out in the landscape during that time when pretty much everything was still closed at this time, or many things were closed. So that was nice. And then to extend that out with the Facebook Live, or with this case with the Zoom, it's been really kind of fun. And so this Michael saw, he was walking along when we did this, and so he snapped some shots of that as well. Some of the really neat things about this piece, just a little bit about the artwork as a river weaving. It's based on the basic principles of a weaving, where you have a warp and the weft, and the elements are aligned in such a way that it forms the warp of the weave, and then the water is a implied weft that's running through the piece. That's why it's kind of important to have it in a river, because then it does sort of emulate how a weaving is constructed. And I think so you can see there's 4 different kind of axes here. The way the pieces are set up so that they're offset, so that it really would be set up like if you were to really look closely at a weaving. This is set up very much the same way, of course, much looser than an actual woven construction. But the offset is one of the main parts of the alignment. And then it also certainly aligns. You can see how it also, there's like several alignments. It aligns along the river in down the river, like you can see, you can look down the river and you can see the alignment there. And then if you're walking along on the path, you can see the alignments as it as the woven elements are aligned, with each other as you go down. And then there's another alignment, which is one of my favorites, is they align on diagonal axes across the river as well. And you can kind of see these diagonal alignments as you look down the river here on this shot. So, diagonal transversing in opposite directions across the river. So to me, even though, I'm not an engineer, I really kind of enjoy the geometry of this piece as well, just in terms of how it aligns in the river. So I really can't thank you enough for sharing these images with me. Here's the heron that I know, the blue heron. And then, of course, I was introduced to the green heron. I really can't thank you enough, Michael, for sharing these images for this talk. It's just really beautiful, just really so beautiful. And I've enjoyed going through these. I'm trying to think here. So, might be coming up on the end of these images from Michael Day. But what I mentioned too, yeah, your show is up. I saw the show is up, or it's getting put up, or it's almost up, and then you're going to be giving a talk. So remember this, April 5th at noon at the library on the lower level, and Michael Day will be there to take us through his work. I believe it's probably some work that you had shown last summer in in Rhode Island. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I managed to get the photos put up. It's down in the lower level in the kind of the north east corner of the lower level of the library outside Einstein's. There's a wall there, a couple of walls. And so I have 24 pieces up. I haven't gotten them labeled yet, but it's a busy week because we're interviewing my successor. I'm retiring.
Oh,
Yeah, and yeah, so all good things, but soon there will be labels, and I'm going to have a map also that runs you along the river and shows you where each image was taken. So that's kind of exciting too. Yeah, and then April 5th is the sort of photo talk at noon in the, what did they call it? The gallery in the library on the first floor. So that should be fun. And I'll, of course, be mentioning this collaboration, which I think is really, has been a lot of fun and has taught me a lot in, you know, light, color, shape, form, all the things that artists need to think about. So I really appreciate your using my work here. Thank you.
it's really my pleasure. And yeah, it was one of the great sub stories of this piece and of this installation was the mystery artwork that is emerging in the Kishwaukee, and as it sort of it played out on Facebook. So I started getting those, and it's like that's one of the favorite little subplot stories of that. And so some of these different videos are from different times too, and so the water and the angle is different, and so obviously there's a couple that one of these was shot with a phone, and the other one was with a better camera. So I can't remember which one is which, but the neat thing about doing it this way is that it kind of, there was some spots where the canoe really was too shallow to go through. So doing it this way, we can kind of get through some of the rough spots, making our way down the river here. And of course, it was also fun to find exactly, what the piece is as far as like, it takes about 8 minutes to canoe this piece, I would say, at a decent pace. And this is an interesting thing here. Now, this was a first. There are some woodchucks who live right along here, and so the woodchucks were sampling the river weaving. And so here's one of them where they came in and they actually were gnawing on the piece. So I think 2 or 3 of them were gnawed on by a woodchuck, and which to me is, I guess, the ultimate compliment as far as, any kind of or maybe the woodchuck was just annoyed that the piece was there in the river. I'm not sure, but anyway, you could see where there's a couple of them got chomped a little bit, and which was kind of funny. And actually, there are quite a few people who do fish this river, and I did have some blowback from a couple of local fishermen who thought that this was, they couldn't believe that this actually was admissible on the river, and they were upset because you could get snagged on the piece. But on the other hand, it's really a phenomenal structure, and the fish really did love these pieces, as did the birds. So I mean, it was temporary. So hopefully the one guy who was really upset was able to get over that, and he's been able to move on, I hope. So making our way along here. And again, if you do have vertigo, I'm sorry that if this is hard to take, but I don't think we want to sit here for 8 minutes on that video stretch there.
John, I did talk to that one guy. I don't know if it was the same guy who was so upset, but
Yeah.
this also illustrates the public facing nature of art and the fact that there are always people who are who maybe aren't going to like it or are going to challenge it or something like
Yep.
that. And that the art is actually in how we negotiate those instances where art installations intersect with public concerns. So that was great. I just wanted to say that, are you sure it was a woodchuck? Because I bet it was a beaver.
Oh, that was my first guess, but I haven't seen any evidence of beavers, so I just had to assume it was the woodchuck, but
There are beavers right around there. I've
it
seen
was the
them before.
beavers then. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think it was
Thanks.
beavers, but anyway,
Yes.
okay, I'll shut up.
No, my first guess was the beaver, but then I kept seeing the woodchucks and I thought, well, it must be the woodchuck, but I think you're right. It was the beavers who were sampling the piece.
Never seen a woodchuck in the water, but I certainly have seen beavers in the water right there where the lagoon lets out,
Okay.
chomping away.
Yeah, so okay, it was the beavers then. So thanks for I did wonder about that, and so my new collaborators, the Kishwaukee. Oh, these never got enlarged. Sorry about that. But this was getting near to where we were finishing up the piece, and we actually did kind of close out the piece with one more walk and talk with the NIU Art Museum in early October. And this was, I think, the latest I've ever had this piece in. And I believe this is the 7th installation of the river weaving. And so this was right at that time when we did that last talk. And actually I had to wear my winter coat. But we still had a good number of people come out for that last Zoom talk with the NIU Art Museum before we closed out that piece. And the photograph that's in the NIU faculty show right now is from this day. And so it was just perfect day, just the light, the very silvery light, and of course the colors of the trees. And so it really was just a really wonderful time period to do that piece. And I guess this piece was a very short. And so this is that day, the day we did that talk, because it did start raining right after we did that talk. And I think it was October, what was it, October 2nd or thereabouts, in 2020. And so it was just a beautiful day. And I just really love the photography in the rain because you get that very silvery light. And the very first installation that I did with the river weaving in 2006, it was actually raining, and then we also had sleet later that day, but it was just beautiful conditions to photograph the piece. And so these are the from that shoot. And the image, if you do get, since the show has been extended, please take some time and get over to the NIU Art Museum, and you'll see the image, and you could tell exactly it's from this angle. It's not this shot per se, but it's right from this location, and it was from this group of images. And more kind of about this image here, I think it's the one that's in the show. But there's just so many. It's just such a beautiful day. And the thing I really like about this shot, and it seems like it really doesn't showcase the actual sculpture very much, and to me that really ends up getting, I think, close to what the piece is really about, is the concept of engaging with nature. And of course it's so much bigger than any of us. And so to have the piece function in this very subtle way, and almost as if the piece is barely existing in the image, ended up, to me, really being quite lovely. And actually this is also from that day in October when we were out there, and we were lucky to get a shot of somebody else who was kayaking the piece here. And so it's kind of nice just to kind of experience it from this angle here. And so I just kind of want to fast forward it here a little bit. And but it's just, again, this idea of interaction, engagement, and right about this time, my younger daughter also, who helped to put the piece in, she would have been in cross country right at this time, and her coach kayaks, and he said, "That's your dad?" So he actually kayaked the piece as well. And so that's just all the different kinds of engagement that you end up having when you do work. Sorry, Joe, outside of the museum, sometimes it can be gratifying at a level that is somewhat different, slightly different than what you would get. And yeah, you're going to get interactions, some of them not always great. I did this installation in the I&M Canal in Lockport for the Illinois Art Museum in 2014, and got a barrage of questions. A lot of the questions, the question that was repeated the most was, who's paying for it and how much, how much was it? There was a little bit of blowback in that regard, but it was also really a lot of really amazing engagement. I don't want to focus on, but when you put yourself out there like this, you are going to have you're going to be confronted with lovers of the piece and also detractors. And so that is, I think it's important to note that that kind of engagement, whether or not it's not always going to be feel good, but it's so important when we talk about freedom of expression. It certainly is not free, and so it is good to get out there and actually pay for it. And as we're seeing with the Senate hearings right now, it's there's going to be contention, but all of what's happening in relation to democracy and the way that the Constitution was written, I think it's just again, democracy, it ain't pretty, but it sure is beautiful. One of my other favorite angles of the river and of this piece. And I think we're going to leave you with one last trip down the Kish in the canoe here. And this one, I think, is my favorite video of this, even though you can see the canoe in here, but it's really smooth. And there's just so many different light changes that happen as you're making your way through the piece. And so this is starting at the Lucinda Bridge and making your way north. And this is really one of the most picturesque stretches of this piece, because you can see a nice long stretch of this piece right through here. And the light is changing really, really, really in a nice fashion. And as we make our way through, you could just see it's just really dynamic, just what's happening with the light on this stretch and on this video. And for some odd reason, this is just really smooth. And I think this is with the iPhone that I just got. And just see that shift that happened right there. It's just really amazing what's happening with the light right here. And so, and then you could just see just this nice steely gray. The beavers were eating on that one right there. Or the beaver. And now it starts to rain right at the end when we're getting towards this back stretch of this piece here. And right there, I had to get out and push it through this little stretch. And here all of a sudden the sun comes back out. And it's just that glow right there coming through. And then all of a sudden, it kind of well, I was hoping to be a little bit more clean with it. Oh yeah, here we go. The light just, it dies right, or it doesn't die, but it just really changes right there. And there's Piper right there. Okay, so well, that is the 2020 August through October river weaving on the Kishwaukee in celebration of the 125th anniversary of NIU. And again, I want to thank everybody. Thanks, Joe, for hosting. And again, if you get a chance, get over to see the faculty show. It's really quite a good addition. And thanks, Michael, for photographing and being a major collaborator on this piece over that time stretch.
Thank you, John.
Yeah. I want to thank both John and Michael. That was really a treat. Thank you. It was nice to view this piece again and to learn more about the process of creating a temporary outdoor installation piece. This will get posted to the Art Museum's website eventually, and the College Visual and Performing Arts blog. We hope our virtual audience will be able to join us again for our next program and to view the exhibition. Our next program is Monday, March 28th at 5 p.m. We'll be hosting another virtual program, The Wandering Mind, an artist talk to be given by NIU printmaking professor Michael Barnes. Anyone has questions or comments for John?
I just really like the videos, which is an angle that I don't have. I'm by the river, but I'm never in it unless by accident. And so the light, these are angles of light that I recognize, but they're even better. Like that one pine next to the river, it really, wow, the reflection is fantastic in a way that I don't see from the banks. So that was great. And the sky, I always love the reflection of the trees in the sky, the clouds and the blue sky in the river. So it was great to see the videos, especially.
Yeah, I really wanted to make sure. That was kind of my battle today, was making sure and it's a lot of data. So as Joe will attest, I kind of cut out there right before we were supposed to start because I was having trouble getting this PowerPoint loaded because it is big. It's I think it's ended up about 100 gig, which
that's huge.
It's a big PowerPoint, yeah. But anyway, thanks so much, and I'm going to say ta-ta for now.
Thanks again, John.
Okay, bye-bye.
Take care.
Thanks, John.
You're welcome.